Hello, my dear students. We are here again with e-biology class presented by Fatima Convent High School, myself, Dipali. Let us move further with the chapter 6 Life Processes, 5th session. Now we studied nutrition. We studied how this nutrition is broken down into several simpler substances and absorbed in the body, and how oxygen reaches the body cells for breaking down these glucose molecules to generate energy. Now, we all know that oxygen and nutrition and various other components produced during this chemical reaction should move from one target place to the other targeted place. And who does this for us? The transport system of our body does this for us. Now, what is a transport system? Let us consider a simple example of a courier service. Now, we know what are the things required for the courier service to function. First, we need the object which is to be transferred from one place to another. You need a vehicle or a medium by which it can be transferred. You need an energy or a person to drive that vehicle, and along with that, you need a well coordinated system between all these things to be transferred from one place to the other place. The same similar mechanism works for transportation in human body. Now let us see what does this tell us. Now visit a health center in your locality and find about what is normal range of hemoglobin content in the human beings. Is it the same for children and adults? Is there any difference in the hemoglobin level for men and women? Visit the veterinary clinic in your locality. Find out what is the normal range of hemoglobin content in an animal like buffalo or a cow. Is this content different in calves, males, and female animals? Compare the difference seen in male and female human beings and animals. How would the difference, if any, be explained? Now let us see what is the transport system. We have seen in various sections that blood transports food, oxygen, and waste material in our body. In class 9, we learned about food being a fluid connective tissue. Blood consists of a fluid medium called plasma. Now, in which the cells are suspended. Plasma transports food, carbon dioxide, and nitrogenous waste material is dissolved form. Oxygen is carried by the red blood corpuscles. Many other substances like salts are also transported by the blood. We thus need a pumping organ to push blood around the body, a network of tubes to reach all the tissues, and a system in place to ensure that this network can be repaired if damaged. So, did you see there are three important components which are required for the transport of the material in our body? The object to be transported is food, oxygen, and waste material. Now, who does this? The blood, which contains plasma and hemoglobin. The plasma transports food, carbon dioxide, and nitrogenous waste in dissolved form, and oxygen is transported by red blood corpuscles, which contains hemoglobin. Many other substances like salts are also transported by the blood. To do all this, we need a pump station or a person to carry this, like the courier person. And what is that? That is our heart. And what are the vehicles carrying this? They are the blood vessels, arteries, veins, and capillaries. And to check if this is well coordinated system or to repair the damage, we have the lymph or the lymphatic system. So, is this concept very similar to the courier service? Yes. So now we can say that which are the organs related to the transport system. They are the heart, that is our pump. Then we have the tubes or the blood vessels, which are like the vehicles transporting the various components. And for maintenance is done by platelets and lymph. So this is how the transport system works, and the various organs related to the transport system are the heart, the blood vessels, arteries, veins, and capillaries, and the blood, that is the liquid connective tissue. These three components form the circulatory system of human body. Now let us see what our heart is and what does it consist of and how it transports blood all over the body. Now heart is a muscular organ which is as big as our fists. Because both oxygen and carbon dioxide have to be transported by blood, the heart has different chambers to prevent the oxygen rich blood from mixing with the blood containing carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide rich blood has to reach the lungs for the carbon dioxide to be removed, and the oxygenated blood from the lungs has to be brought back to the heart. This oxygen rich blood is then pumped to the rest of the body. We can follow this process step by step. Oxygen rich blood from the lungs comes to the thin walled upper chambers of the heart on the left atrium that can be observed in the figure. The left atrium relaxes when it is collecting this blood. It then contracts while the next chamber, the left ventricle, relaxes so that the blood is transferred to it. When the muscular chamber ventricle contracts in its turn, the blood is pumped out of the body. So you can say that the heart is divided into first two parts, left heart and right heart, or the right chamber and the left chamber, which are again subdivided into two more parts. So total there are four chambers of the heart. They are right atrium, right ventricle, left atrium, left ventricle. Now the blood enters the heart through various connective pipelines, you can say, or the blood vessels. The vena cavas. What does the vena cava do? The vena cavas bring the deoxygenated blood from the body, and they have two sub branches, the superior vena cava and the posterior vena cava. The superior vena cava brings the blood from the upper body part, and the posterior vena cava brings blood from lower body part, and this is then brought to the right atrium. Once it has entered the right atrium, due to the contraction and relaxation, by opening the tricuspid valve and the bicuspid valve, it moves into the next, that is the right ventricle. The tricuspid valve present between the right atrium and right ventricle allows the blood to pass into right ventricle. Now this right ventricle then pumps the blood to the lungs through the pulmonary artery. Now there is a speciality about this artery. Generally, the arteries are the blood vessels which carry oxygenated blood from the heart to the various body organs. But this pulmonary artery is the only artery in the human body which carries deoxygenated blood. It is an exception. Similarly, pulmonary vein. Now, after the blood has been oxygenated in the lungs, is brought back to the heart by the pulmonary vein, which is also an exception, as a vein always carries deoxygenated blood and carries blood heart from various body organs to the heart. So, this is an exception here. It carries blood from the lungs to the heart, but it carries oxygenated blood. This blood brought from the pulmonary vein is emptied into the left atrium, again by the contraction and expansion simultaneously of the left atrium and the left ventricle. Through the bicuspid valve, the blood flows into the left ventricle, and from the left ventricle, due to contraction, it moves out into the body through the biggest artery, that is the aorta. It moves into the body parts through the three branches of aorta: the posterior aorta, the superior aorta, and the cardiac aorta, which gives the blood to the heart itself, or the muscles of the heart itself, because heart is made up of a special cardiac tissue or cardiac muscles. It requires blood. This is reached by the aorta. So this is how the heart functions. Now, after the blood, deoxygenated blood of comes from the body to the upper chamber of the right atrium. The right atrium, as it relaxes, as the right atrium contracts, the corresponding lower chamber, the right ventricle dilates, thus transfers the blood to the right ventricle, which in turn pumps it to the lungs by oxygenation. Since ventricle has to pump blood into various organs, they have thick muscular walls than the atria do. Valves ensure that the blood do not flow back when the atria or ventricles contract. Now oxygen enters the blood in the lungs. The separation of the right side and the left side of the heart is useful to keep the oxygenated and deoxygenated blood from mixing. Such separation allows a highly efficient supply of oxygen to the body. It is useful in animals that has high energy need, such as birds and mammals, which constantly use energy to maintain their body temperature. In animals that do not use energy for this purpose, the body temperature depends on the temperature in the environment. But animals like amphibians or many reptiles have three-chambered hearts and tolerate some mixing of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. Fishes, on the other hand, have only two-chambered hearts, and the blood is pumped to the gills is oxygenated there and passed directly to the rest of the body. Thus, blood goes only once through the heart in the fish during one cycle of passage through the body. On the other hand, it goes through the heart twice during each cycle in other vertebrates, and that is why it is called as double circulation. Are you very much clear with circulation of blood with the help of heart? Now let us see what is blood pressure. The force that blood exerts against the walls of the vessel is called blood pressure. This pressure is much greater in arteries than in veins. The blood pressure inside the arteries during ventricular systole, that is contraction, is called systolic pressure. And the pressure in the arteries during ventricular diastole, that is relaxation, is called as diastolic pressure. The normal systolic pressure is about 120 mm of Hg, which is compared to the mercury level, and the diastolic pressure is 80 mm of Hg. Blood pressure is measured with an instrument called sphygmometer. High blood pressure is also called hypertension and is caused by the constrictions of arterioles, which result in the increased resistance to blood flow. It can lead to the rupture of an artery and internal bleeding. So, do you understand how important the blood pressure is in our body? Now, let us see what are the different blood vessels. We already mentioned about them for the heart. The tubes, blood vessels. Arteries are the vessels which carry blood away from the heart to various organs of the body. Since the blood emerges from the heart under high pressure, the arteries have thick elastic valves. The veins collect the blood from different organs and bring it back to the heart. They do not need thick walls because the blood is no longer under pressure. Instead, they have valves that ensure that blood flows only in one direction. So, did you understand the difference between arteries and veins? Yes. Arteries carry blood from the heart to the body's different organs, and veins carry blood from body's different organs to the heart. Arteries have thick valves, whereas veins have thin walls. The arteries do not have valves, but veins do have valves. Arteries generally carry oxygenated blood except the pulmonary artery, and veins generally carry deoxygenated blood except the pulmonary vein. On reaching an organ or tissue, the arteries divide into smaller and smaller vessels to bring the blood in contact with all the individual cells. The smallest vessel have walls which are one cell thick and are called as capillaries. Exchange of material between blood and surrounding cells takes place across this thin valve, the capillaries. They join together to form veins and convey the blood away from the organs or tissues. This is how the blood vessels are. Now, maintenance system. What does platelets do, or who maintains if there is any problem with the transport system? What happens if this system of tubes develops a leakage? Think about situations when we are injured and start bleeding. Naturally, the loss of blood from the system can be minimized. In addition, leakage would lead to a loss of pressure, which would reduce the efficiency of pumping system. To avoid this, the blood has platelet cells which circulate around the body and plug this leakage by helping to clot the blood at this point of injury. So, they function as the repair system of the arteries, veins, and capillaries. Now, we have one more system which helps in maintaining the circulatory system, that is the lymph or the lymphatic system. There is another important type of fluid also involved in transportation. This is called lymph or tissue fluid. Through the pores present in the walls of the capillaries, some amount of plasma proteins and blood cells escape into the intracellular space in the tissue to form the tissue fluid or lymph. It is similar to the plasma of the body of the blood but colorless and contains less proteins. Lymph drains into the lymphatic capillaries from the intercellular space, which joins to form large lymph vessels that finally opens into larger veins. Lymph carries digested and absorbed fats from intestine and drains excess fluid from extracellular space back into the blood. So that is the function of lymph, which is a transparent fluid and contains less proteins than the blood, and it helps in maintaining the transport system. Isn't it easy and clear? Yes. So this is our heart which pumps every minute, every second to keep us alive. Thank you.